just want to introduce myself. I'm John Phillips. I'm the Director of Athletics. Appreciate all the parents that have joined us today. I know there are also some of our staff members on the call. And Justin White, our Director of Sports Medicine, and Pam Petrone, who is the Director of Health Services for the campus, are both here as well. They will be part of our call today, but appreciate everybody's time. A few more people look like they are logging in now, so why don't we go ahead and get started. We'll be sensitive to everybody's time for those of you that made it on time, and we are going to be recording this. So if anybody misses it, they'll have an opportunity to come back and watch it at a later date. So let me jump over to my presentation here. And if I share my screen, hopefully this will work like it did when we prepared it. And it's not quite there yet. It's all right. Can you guys all see that now?
Yes.
All right. Fantastic. Yes. So obviously the topic that we're all here to talk about is the return to play guidelines for our student athletes. And again, for those that just joined us, I know a couple of people have joined in the last minute, about 7 more people have logged in. So I'm John Phillips. I'm the Director of Athletics here in Daytona Beach. I've been here now for 23 years, and certainly a different scenario that we're dealing with this year. But I think our staff has developed an outstanding game plan, both overall as a university and especially here in athletics, to try to run our program in a safe and efficient manner. As I mentioned previously, a couple of staff members on the call with us. They're going to participate here in a little bit, especially if there are questions at the end. We will take questions. You can put those in the chat, and some of our staff members are looking at the chat to look at those. And then we'll also open it up toward the end if anybody has a question they just want to ask, the old-fashioned way. So Justin White is our Director of Sports Medicine. Pam Petrone is the Director of Health Services. And they have been working incredibly hard over the summer together, along with Dr. Roy Lemaster, our team physician from Halifax Health, to put together this game plan. In Pam's case, she's been putting together a game plan for the entire campus. Justin and Dr. Lemaster focused on our student athletes here on this side of campus. So overall university protocols, I think everybody's aware of these things, but just in case your son or daughter hasn't shared all the information with you, a quick overview of the things that are going on campus. We have been wearing face coverings since March, since the pandemic hit, both indoors and outdoors. And we are doing that as often as possible as it regards to athletics. And we'll talk about that a little bit more later. When we are engaged in active exercise is a time when you do not have to wear a face covering. But as you're coming to the field, from the field, to class, to your car, all those things, face coverings required. Physical distancing rules are in place. Same with athletics where we can. And you'll see that in some of our protocols later. The wellness checks have been going on since March on a daily basis for everybody, students, faculty, and staff. And then also the hand sanitizing opportunities are everywhere, around every corner. Quick recap. I know, again, those of you that are on board here are parents that are really engaged in your son or daughter's education. You probably know about all these things. We moved classes online back in March. Most of our students returned home. Some of you parents might be first-year freshmen and maybe not aware of what happened back in March, at least on our campus. So we resumed flight operations in May, resumed face-to-face classes back at the end of June in Summer B, and then, of course, the fall semester started back in the early part of August with move-in and then classes starting a couple weeks ago. From an athletics standpoint, back in March, NCAA canceled all their spring sports. Back in July, they made announcements about the postponement of fall sports. Those are all going to be moved to the spring. And then what's going to happen in the spring? Well, the way we look at it, we really have no idea what's going to change between now and then, but assuming it's safe to do so, and we are doing everything in our power to do that, we're going to buckle up, and we're going to try to play all 20 sports in the spring. And I'm not sure exactly how we're going to do that with shared facilities and a limited number of staff members, but we are committed in every way possible to try to do that. However, we need to do it for all of our sports. Again, a quick update from the campus. This is information that's been published on our website, and this is the data that I compiled this presentation last week. So the data is fairly current, but not the most current. There were some new test results released last week. You know, as of September the 4th, you can see 2,185 individuals tested here in Daytona, the number of positive cases and the positivity rate. Same with our student athletes, coaches, and staff. And our positivity rate being very, very similar to the campus-wide population. We'd all love for that to be zero. Today's day and age, really just not possible. But I think those numbers, 1.2 or 1.3%, is very, very good for both the campus and our student athletes. So the policies and procedures and protocols that the university put in place back earlier in the year are working, and they're working effectively, and that's the reason you see those good numbers there. The most recent update of 118 people tested on the Daytona Beach campus. They're doing testing every Thursday now, 1 day a week is what they call random testing, and there is also sentinel testing where students can volunteer to be tested. That's being done on the other side of campus, but the testing that's done on Thursdays is done in our building, and there were 118 tested 2 weeks ago with one positive case. Then there was another test batch this past Thursday, and I have not seen those results come in yet, so I can't share any of that information. But the bottom line is the testing data is very, very good for our campus and continues to be very, very good. In regard to our return to play, we put this information together from a lot of different sources, and I'm going to list them all here. Obviously the CDC guidelines, the state of Florida guidelines, the NCAA, and then also the NATA, the National Athletic Trainers Association. That's the membership group that our sports medicine certified athletic trainers are all part of. So these guidelines have been put in place with student athlete health in mind, and along with guidelines from the NCAA. And of course, we still have to follow all of the Embry-Riddle guidelines as well. So this is a well thought out plan. The sports have been divided up into low, medium, and high risk, depending on a lot of different factors, whether the sport is indoors or outdoors, the amount of close contact that someone might have in that particular sport. Those are some of the factors that were involved in the NCAA and how they divided up the sports, low, medium, and high risk. So I am going to turn it over at this point to Justin White, our Director of Sports Medicine, and he can walk through some of our pre-screening protocol that we did on our student athletes as they returned to campus earlier this summer.
Thanks, John. Hopefully my audio is okay.
All good.
Okay, good. So some of the things, and I'm going to have to read through some of these slides since John set it up. But you know, we've been busy doing a lot of different things, trying to prepare for our athletes to come back and come back in a safe manner and progress them in a safe manner. So as John said, we use a lot of different areas to kind of evaluate that and build our decision-making or return to play protocol. So pre-participation physicals, all new student athletes or flagged returners would have to go through our physicals. We do things such as sickle cell trait testing. It's a one-time test that we do on every single student athlete. EKG baseline testing is a one-time test that we do on every athlete as well. Impact testing, depending on the risk of the sport, depends on if you have that. Impact testing is a concussion baseline testing, computer-based. We do sway testing on every student athlete here yearly. That's a balance test that uses the cell phone to measure balance during different exercises and things when your eyes are closed. And then COVID-19 questionnaire completed by all student athletes. The other thing that we did that was a requirement to be able to be cleared to be even participate in any athletic activity at all, we also had to go through COVID-19 testing. And through that testing is where we, if you were clear and negative, then that allowed you to progress into working with the teams. I'll let you switch that, John. Our athletic training room. So, this definitely was an area for us of main concern. How do we still care for our student athletes while maintaining proper sanitation and spacing guidelines, things like that. We're lucky enough that our tables are spaced out about approximately 6 foot apart. But we limited the number into our athletic training room to 12 people total. That's student athletes with sports med staff that would be working with them. So, admittance, you must comply with ERU guidelines. So as far as the university goes, you have to have a wellness check. You have to have a mask on to even be in the building. We have a sanitation station outside of our athletic training rooms that you have to sanitize your hands before you ever step foot into the training room. That way, if you touch something such as an ice scoop or something like that, your hands have been sanitized and we're not spreading any germs. The capacity, like I said, is 12 people. And we've also implemented a scheduling system this year, which allows our athletes through an app on their phone or through our website to schedule an appointment time with their athletic trainer, so we know exactly how many people are in our training room at any time. And then cleaning, we clean everything after anybody touches anything. And then daily we have our cleaning crew come in and clean. And then we're also spraying down our weight room multiple times a day, but also our athletic training room. At the end of the day, we're spraying it down with a mister throughout the entire room. That's Virex spray, and that's allowed to sit and dry and clean everything. Our weight room, we've actually just kind of increased the numbers on this from 12 to 15 student athletes, plus we're allowing a coach or two to be in there as well at that time. But each student athlete has to hand sanitize before they come into the weight room. They also have to, each athlete gets a Virex spray bottle with a towel, and they're to clean every single thing they touch, whether it's a weight, a pad, a bar, anything they touch, they should be cleaning before and after using it. The other thing, I'm not sure if we have it on here, but masks are also mandatory in our weight room. So we've eliminated any cardio, no treadmill running or Stairmaster or anything of that kind in our weight room. But as far as lifting goes, when you're lifting, you have to have a mask on. Hours, we closed it down for the first 3 weeks. And this was for a couple of reasons, and that we'll discuss a little bit as we get into the next phases. We broke down all of our teams into smaller pods, and those pods had to stay together for those first couple of weeks and still are in those pods during practice times. But we wanted to allow that as kind of like a quarantine time, so we could see, was there any cases that popped up? Was there any spreading within our athletics? And there wasn't. So we were able to move on to our second phase of that, which is this week, and we're now utilizing our weight room. Temperature checks on site prior to early morning workouts. So we have some teams that start at 5 a.m. in the weight room. And prior to entering that weight room, since our wellness checks are not up and really running at that time, we're doing a temperature check on every student athlete that comes in there to make sure that they did not get sick overnight, that they're not trying to push through something and come in there sick. So that's something that we implemented. And then sanitation, again, with that mister that we have, it's a spray mister. We do it before we open in the weight room. We do it midday. We shut down and spray the entire room. And then at the end of the day, we're also spraying the room. Our locker rooms obviously can be concerning, and we came up with a policy. This is working with our team physician as well. Occupancy, we're limiting that to 6 people in the locker room at a time, and those 6 people have to be within a pod that they're practicing in. And then also some other things. Face covering should still be worn when possible in the weight room. and then using every other shower in the weight room rather than having every shower in use. And again, sanitation, sanitizing, everything as they go in, and then the locker rooms are sprayed down once a day as well with that. Policies and protocols at practice: follow mask requirements and physical distancing when not able to wear their mask. So in some situations, some baseball players in the batting cage that are just hitting off a tee, they should be wearing their masks. Now, if a baseball player goes out in the field and they're doing sprints, they could take their mask off. We don't want to cause any other issues with breathing issues or not ventilating or cooling down with the mask on. So we do allow them to take the mask off during certain times, basically anytime that there's aerobic activity. Personal water bottles provided to every student athlete. So we purchased about 550 water bottles this year. We do this every year, but making sure that every student athlete has their own water bottle. And we're not allowing athletes to go up to our water coolers with just a general, plastic water bottle that they buy from the store that has a small opening in it. We want the wide mouth bottles. They shouldn't be touching it. They have to sanitize their hands before even using it. No congregating at the water stations as well. We're asking our coaches to really help enforce that and keep their groups in their pods, allow water breaks at different times, and just make sure everybody gets what they need and then gets out and spaces out again. This is our return to play protocol for our low risk teams, right? Yes, low and medium risk. Yeah. We're able to move a little bit quicker with some of these teams just because of, in general, the distancing is a lot easier, or they're outside is another thing. So just an example, like our golf team, we have no activity the first week. They were able to go into playing golf and practicing on that first phase, just because they're able to maintain that distancing throughout their practice. They're not in competition right now. An example would be if they're in a golf cart alone, we wouldn't require a mask, but if they're in a golf cart with another player, they would have to have a mask on. Some other teams there, you can see how they progress: tennis, track and field. So now we just started our phase 2. And as we move into our higher risk sports, you'll see a little difference there. But you can see with track and field, baseball and softball, still in the small groups, allowed to use equipment, meaning allowed to throw the baseballs, allowed to swing the bats, things of that nature. That wasn't allowed in the first phase. Here's our higher risk sports. And obviously, these sports have contact. Basketball, if you have a defender defending an offensive player there, that's close contact. You're right up on each other. Lacrosse, you have physical contact and collisions. Rowing, it sounds weird to have in there, but when you really think about it, you're in a tiny little boat and you're right behind the person in front of you. And if they don't have a mask on, that's the reason why the NCAA has put them in that category. Soccer obviously has contact. Volleyball is definitely, they're close encounters, but we were lucky enough to have about 3/4 of our volleyball team on campus all summer that were tested, working together. So we felt comfortable being able to progress them to that next phase, which they're in, or will be starting, I should say, a little bit sooner than some of our other contact sports. And then cheerleading as well has a little bit slower progression just because of the close contact.
Justin, let me expand a little bit for you here on, or ask you to expand a little bit about the pods or the groups and why those were set up. A couple folks have asked me about that. When you've got a group of 10 in lacrosse instead of the entire group team together, why did we do that?
Your general groups that the CDC has come out with is of 10 or smaller. So we've tried to stick with that number. And then being an outdoor sport, being, having airflow, having sunlight, those types of things, and just more space in general, the numbers were able to be a little bit higher. Whereas basketball, we were trying to really stick around that 5 number. We're on a court. It's in a smaller facility. I mean, our gym is pretty big, so we have good enough ventilation in there, but still didn't feel comfortable expanding to a full roster of 10 or 15 plus players in those situations. So that's the main reasoning of why some of your indoor sports are a little bit smaller, and then your outdoor sports are generally a little bit larger in these groups. And these groups stay together; they don't change. So our basketball group of 6, they will stay in that group of 6 the entire time. And what happens if we have a positive and they're in that small group, we can analyze that small group a little bit easier, and that helps Pam Patrone in our health services department really figure out who's had close contact, who's not close contact, who has to quarantine, who do we have to test, do we have to shut down a pod or not? Those help us make those decisions a little bit easier.
Yeah, good information there. And again, our staff who's on board here has heard me say this 100 times, and I'll say it another 100. This is everything we're doing is a risk management exercise. So we're trying to limit the risk where we can. Small groups are better than big groups. Outdoors better than indoors. Wearing masks where you can and it's feasible is better than not, and things go on from there. So everything we're doing is ultimately a risk management exercise to try to ensure the health and safety of our participants.
I just Kayla also passed me on a question here. Will athletes be COVID tested weekly once season begins? So right now, what's happening is, like John said, there's random testing throughout the university. There's also the Sentinel testing that students can voluntarily sign up for. We will also start working with our health services department and other people on campus to try to increase Sentinel testing within our athletic department to get more testing. And then it really depends on what the environment is in the spring and when competitions start up, and also what the NCAA is requiring of its schools to do from a testing standpoint. The testing right now is pretty strict. If we were to have competitions in a contact sport, it's, I forget the exact guidelines just because we're not in that phase right now, but I think it was testing maybe 72 hours prior.
Every 72 hours. Correct.
It's
at a minimum.
Yeah. So that's obviously causes a lot of things you had to worry about, cost and how do you set up all that testing and stuff. But as the spring moves closer, we'll be able to see what the NCAA is recommending and the CDC, and also what the numbers are looking like within Florida and the university.
Yeah. Yeah, the university is obviously following NCAA guidelines on things like that, and currently that's why you see at the major Division I level, generally it's only football that's being played right now. Just the expenses involved and the amount of testing that you'd have to do is just really, really challenging in order to play a competition. So that's why you saw almost virtually every Division II school in America decide not to play until the spring semester, because it was really just cost prohibitive to test every student athlete every 72 hours prior to every contest with the cost of testing right now. So that was one of the many reasons why the Division II model has moved to a spring. Hopefully the testing will become easier to get access to. The costs will continue to come down, and there are some more rapid tests that are fairly successful that have come down in price, quite a few that we're excited to learn more about, potentially get our hands on. But right now, the overall health and safety of the entire university was paramount, and that's the reason the decisions were made to throttle back on athletics, just to reacclimate students, period, to our campus, to our dorms, to our classrooms, and make sure we can do that successfully. And again, Embry-Riddle is doing that very successfully, as you read in the news on an almost daily basis about many other schools that are having to shut down or go to an online teaching model because they've had outbreaks. And so far so good. And I'll knock on my desk here to hopefully that continues here on our campus in Daytona Beach, because it's been very, very good so far.
John, this might be a good time just to answer this question as well. So as far as the testing goes and quarantine, we're not requiring as an athletic department testing. That's us making that decision of having the test. But the university is doing random testing on Thursdays, PCR testing, like John was saying, in our lobby. The people that are picked for that do have to quarantine. That's a university rule, and that might be something at the end that Pam can expand on and discuss with that. But the sentinel testing does not require the individual that gets that to quarantine. So I'm not sure if that will change down the road, but that's the reasoning behind that. And like I said, maybe Pam can mention that at the end as we finish up and answer questions.
Yeah, that is correct. And sometimes there's been some misinformation that I've heard from some of the parents that have reached out to me that why are they my son had to quarantine, but his roommate didn't. And I think ultimately, and again, we'll let Pam expand on it, but it's the testing that's done here in our building, which is the random testing. I'm not sure that's the right word, but I keep using random testing as opposed to the sentinel testing where it is voluntary, the voluntary testing across the street. Where you do not have to quarantine. You can be walking to class, swing by, get a quick test done, and keep right on going to class if you're doing the sentinel testing. So those two are different testing things that are going on. Let me jump back in here, and I'll let Justin get back on track here. I think our next topic is something that a lot of folks, I'm sure, are interested in. What if a student athlete gets sick?
Don't come to school.
Yeah, there you go. It's the most important thing.
Here's our thing, and we're really trying to drive that home to everybody, staff members, students, faculty, staff. Don't come to school, get evaluated, and make sure before we really talk to our coaches about not having that tough through it mentality. We just cannot chance it. So the way it's been working is if a student athlete gets sick, they typically contact their athletic trainer. Or they just directly contact health services, but that's eventually what we're going to tell them. Contact health services. Health services is doing telehealth with these individuals. They'll evaluate them and then decide whether or not they should come in to be tested or be further evaluated. They have a cool little unit that they've put in over there that they are able to do all this testing and evaluations outside of their main facility. But that's kind of our plan of action is just don't come to school. Don't come to campus if you're feeling sick. Contact health services and let them evaluate you and decide on what you should be doing at that point.
Yeah. And if it happens on the weekend and health services happens to be closed, that first thing there, contact your team athletic trainer. Every one of our student athletes should have the contact information for their athletic trainer. Our athletic trainer is not going to treat them necessarily, but they're going to be able to provide them guidance, whether they think they should go to an urgent care facility or what they should do. But that can be a resource when health services is not available, is your team's athletic trainer. And again, your son or daughter should have the contact information for your team's trainer or their team's trainer. All right, if there's a positive case on a team.
So, too far, there you go. Student athletes removed from team involvement and must self-quarantine. We really work closely with our health services department on this with testing or if somebody's not feeling well and does get tested. If they were to come back positive, we're definitely, they are removed from team involvement. If they're still in the small groups, depending on when this happens, and the director of health services and our team physician, we can work together on deciding how do we work with the group that they were in. It's hard to kind of summarize in a meeting like this because it really depends. Is it basketball? Is it track and field? Is it tennis? That really will dictate some of the decisions that are made, whether or not a pod has to quarantine or a team or things of that nature. So that's all kind of up in the air and depends on the situation.
Yeah, one size does not fit all in this case, depending on the size of the team. And as I mentioned there, some of those examples, indoor sport versus outdoor sport, close contact or no, every case being handled individually. More information on a positive case on a team.
If living in the dorm, student athlete will be moved to Chanute for quarantine. They have a section of this dorm that they are using strictly for this. If they're off campus, they'll have to quarantine at home. If living with other Embry-Riddle students, Director of Health Services will determine plan of action depending on contact amount, type of contact with the positive individual. So, there's been situations where we've had somebody positive, and I also think maybe Pam can touch on this a little bit later as well, is I think they're also recommending, if possible, for the student to go home. We have a lot of kids that are fairly local that might be able to go home and quarantine at home. But it really depends on how close of contact they're having with their roommates. A lot of our kids, if they're on separate teams, one might be practicing in the morning, one might practice at night. They got classes all day. There's really not much contact there. So again, health services will kind of determine that. Team members and coaches will be monitored closely and daily with symptom checks by sports medicine. So if we have a positive on a team that occurred during, when we're in these phases and practices and stuff, we would be checking those teams much more closely and doing like a second wellness check during the day. As of right now, we haven't had any athletes that were positive that were currently involved with our athletic teams. Everything that we've had was caught before, during our kind of initial testing, or during the summer, was caught before they were interacting with our teams.
Yeah, just to give you a little bit more information there, we had one positive case back in June. We had 4 in the month of July, and we had 2 in August of our student athletes. 476 athletes total, and the 7 positive cases that we've had since June have been pretty well spread out. And like Justin said, none have been actively participating when they were when they popped positive. So that's helped us, to prevent the spread. And then some folks might not be familiar with the Chanute complex. That is a university-owned housing complex, but it's physically off the Daytona Beach campus. It's not far off campus. If you're familiar with the local area, it's down near the intersection of Clyde Morris Boulevard and Bevel Road, kind of down toward the Publix. It's directly across the street. It's only about 150 yards from the Publix down there at the corner. So it is university-owned housing complex, but technically it is physically off the campus. Return to play if there's a student athlete that is positive but is asymptomatic.
I'm going to touch on this pretty quick here. Asymptomatic. So pretty much all of our kids have been asymptomatic. We haven't had a lot that ended up having symptoms. But if you're asymptomatic and you tested, you are 10 days, you have to quarantine from your test date. We will redo your EKG after you're cleared at about that 14-day mark. Our team physicians will review that and see if they see any changes. Just if you're not aware, one of the things they are finding with COVID-19 cases, generally more with people that have symptoms and significant symptoms, is some cardiac issues. So we're making sure that we really check into this close. So we do the EKG follow-up, and then we're also doing troponin blood work to see if there's anything off with their cardiac blood work. They're going to meet with the team physician during our training room rounds. Training room rounds are when our doctors come into our facility, which is Mondays and Wednesdays. So after they've finished these EKGs and the blood work, they're still meeting with our team physicians to go through a review there. And then once they meet with them, if the doctors are satisfied with everything, then they'll create a return to play guideline that we'll follow.
And again, like we said, with some of the stuff we spoke about earlier, every case being treated individually so that the return to play is customized to that student athlete and their health and what symptoms they might have had, how severe a case they might have had. And then how about somebody who was symptomatic?
Symptomatic, 10 days from the onset of symptoms, and also 24 hours post-symptom resolution. So if you're having symptoms on your 10th day, but they go away, you still have to have 24 hours before you can return to campus or do anything. We're also doing an EKG test follow-up, but that's 14 days from their symptoms resolution. We're doing the troponin blood work as well with them. Again, the team physician review with them, depending on the level of symptoms that they had, our physicians may require more follow-up testing, whether that's a stress test or an echo, even the possibility of a cardiac MRI. And then again, once they get to the point where they feel comfortable with all their workup, then a return to play plan is developed. Asymptomatic people in general are going to return a lot quicker. Symptomatic are going to be slower.
And then last couple things here, and I'm going to open it up for questions. I'm going to take, after I stop screen sharing here in a little bit, I'm going to take all these links and copy and paste them into the chat. Early on, we talked about the NCAA's principles of resocialization of collegiate sport. And essentially, that's the return to play guidelines that the NCAA has put together. And so there's a tremendous amount of information. If you want to learn everything possible out there, it seems like you can read these documents. They are very, very well developed, well thought out. Dr. Brian Hainline, the chief medical officer for the NCAA, along with his COVID-19 panel of experts, put them all together. And these are the guidelines that we've basically used to build our plan moving forward. So there's some great information here. If you do want to learn more, that information is available to you. And I'll pop forward to the next one here. Some contact information if you want to take this down. The number for health services, we had that on the board earlier. Obviously, the 226-7917. Our counseling center is located on the same part of campus, 226-6035. And then if you do have questions about housing, if your son or daughter lives on campus and they did have to move to Chanute or their roommate did, I know there's all sorts of issues that can pop up there about how do I get food, where do I go, where can I not go? The housing office at 323-8000 is the best source of information for things like that. And then open it up to questions. I know we took some in the chat earlier, and I'm also going to give Pam a chance to comment. So let me see if I can turn off the screen sharing, and we go back to the old-fashioned way. And now I can actually see the questions. And I'll give Pam Patrone, our Director of Health Services, a chance to share some information with you guys. Maybe anything we didn't touch on or expand on some of the things that Justin touched on.
Hey, thanks, JP. So I'm just going to really just talk really fast about all of the testing that we're doing throughout the university, throughout the Daytona Beach campus, and hopefully answer some questions that you guys may have. And if you have any additional questions, happy to answer them after this. So there's multiple different types of testing that we're doing for COVID throughout the university. So one of them is that we had paired with a hospital in our area. They come over once a week on Thursday. We actually do the testing. They provide the test kits. We were really nervous about running out of medical supplies and not being able to test the university as much as we wanted to. So they come over every Thursday. At the time we do anywhere between usually 80 up to 150 tests on Thursday. Those are the ones where the university leadership does ask that people quarantine for the period of time until those test results get back. The memorandum of understanding with that is that those test results will be given back to us by that Saturday. Sometimes, not lately, it has been Sunday, but not within the last couple of weeks. I had to wait that long that they would actually quarantine. So it was a quick turnaround time. We started that back in June. That was when testing was lasting anywhere from 7 to 10 days. So we were really thankful to pair with this hospital to be able to provide that testing. So that's one type of testing. We see people get emails out that and this come over and we and then I give them results on when those results come back. Either send them an email if they're negative, if they're positive, we just a little chat on the phone and talk about what's going to happen next. The other type of testing that we do is we go out into the dorms. We actually have a suture testing that we do that it actually tells us which dorm we might want to pay attention to. So we're really focused on the dorms right now. So we'll go out to a specific dorm each week. We kind of concentrate on location and the kids line up for the testing. That type of testing, we don't ask the student quarantine. We actually got to where they are. We do the kits. That's called Let's Get Checked. The students actually receive results before we do one. Sometimes results are 24 hours later. But students have been really good at letting us know. We've only had 2 positives from that, and we've done, oh my gosh, I'm going to say over 500 of those tests, at least over 500. So that really is. And then if you have been exposed or if you're symptomatic, we have testing that happens over in health services. We do the rapid test that will have those results within 15 minutes. It's a preliminary test. They're really good at determining positives if you catch a symptomatic individual within the first 5 days. Not so good at catching a positive if it's after that time. So it's an antigen test. The antigen test is an active that we're looking for. We do send the samples out to lab to confirm that it's positive. If it's negative and they're symptomatic, they shelter in place until those symptoms resolve, but we still send it out to LabCorp to confirm that negative or to confirm that positive. So those are the different types of testing with the rapid test, and then we also do LabCorp tests here. And those are anterior nares. It's actually, they're switching from a nasopharyngeal test to a one where like CVS does, where the students actually do it, but we stand there, we watch them, we guide them through the process, we help them put the top on, we send it off to the laboratory. So those are all the different types of testing that we do. When a student is exposed to an individual that is a confirmed positive, and if we really interview every single person that's positive, and then we interview those people that they think that they were in contact with. And contact, I know it's a little bit different with athletics, and that's why I work really closely with Justin with that, because contact from an athletic standpoint is probably a little bit different than it is from our general perspective, possibly in a way, only because of the sports that's happening. However, it is being within a 6-foot distance for greater than 15 minutes. And that has to be a continual 15 minutes. So it has to be, usually it's somebody that's eating at lunch or eating at dinner, or somebody that you live with. That's the most common. So we really talk about this when we interview those positive individuals to see who is truly, truly a contact. Because if you are a contact, you have to go into a quarantine for 14 days. And that's not an easy thing to do on any individual. So we really, really make sure that when we put people into any form of isolation or quarantine, that they truly are a contact or they are a positive. We do ask any contacts, the first thing that we ask them to do is go home. If they can't go home, that's fine. We'll find them someplace here locally, but we know how hard that is to be in quarantine for 14 days. So we know, hey, if you can go home. Some people can't go home. Some people, their families are high-risk individuals, and we absolutely understand that by all means. I mean, we are here to work with the students, to work with the families, whatever it takes to keep them safe. That is our goal in order to do that. So I know that there were some questions regarding the quarantine and the isolation, and I'm not sure if I answered them all. Off campus, I was thinking if you test positive on campus, if you're a positive individual on campus, we do find a separate location for that positive individual. If they can't go home, then that would be drive home to a place in Florida or wherever it is nearby. And if they're feeling okay to do that, then we do put them in a different location. That other location where they are is usually a room, a kitchen, and a bathroom. So no matter where they are on campus, if they're a new res without a kitchen, they get to go to a place that has a kitchen and has all of that. We also deliver meals. They are delivered 3 meals a day along with snacks and water. And that is done by our Sodexo group. And our campus safety and security actually arranges for all of that to make sure that they're getting their meals. We will check in on them. We also advise them if they develop any kind of signs and symptoms, if they're asymptomatic, to reach out to us and to let us know. So that person, if that person's positive, that person then goes off and they will isolate in a separate location. The roommate is usually a contact because they're in the same room. So the roommate, the person that's positive, only has to isolate for 10 days, but the roommate has to isolate for 14 or quarantine for 14 days from the last date of exposure. And it's really, kind of crazy, but that is what the guidelines are. It's kind of crazy that you're exposed and you have to quarantine longer than a person who's positive, but they believe that a person who's positive has probably already developed those probably has at least 4 days behind them from the time that they popped positive. So that's the reasoning that the CDC has that. So then the roommate now needs to quarantine for 14 days. So the first thing that we ask the roommate, can you go home? Is there any, and if they travel, I mean, they've just had an exposure to a positive patient, they're not sick, they're not positive. If they could travel, if there's a way that they could go home and do that at home, we know that that's better mentally to go home and do that, to sit in a dorm and do that. The suite mates, we really interview each suite mate. A lot of times you're not within contact of a suite mate. Some suite mates you just don't have any contact with. We do get concerned about the bathroom, of sharing the bathrooms. So then we do ask the suite mates. Suite mates can actually stay in the dorm and be able to isolate that in the dorm or quarantine in the dorm. If you're off campus, then we ask, when you're off campus, you know, who's your roommate? Some people live with Embry-Riddle students, some people don't. Most Riddle students do live together. What does your living situation look like? Do you share a kitchen? Do you share utensils? Do you eat together? Do you have separate bathrooms? Do you have to share a bathroom? I know, like for me, one of my daughters, she was off campus in a different state. She had a roommate, but they each had their own bathrooms, separate lives, separate everything. They never even saw each other. So we take that all into consideration, because it's very difficult for us to put somebody into isolation or quarantine if they really truthfully didn't need to be in isolation or quarantine. So we just really pay attention to that before we make any of those kinds of decisions. So did I answer everything? We also notify all the instructors too, just to let you know. We reach out at the end of the day, every day at 4:30, sometimes 4:15. We have a call with Director of Housing, Director of Campus Safety, because Director of Campus Safety is our contact tracer for the university, our Dean of Students Office, and then Health Services. We talk about every single person that we may need to shelter in place, quarantine, or isolate, how they're going to get meals, where we're going to put them, what's happening, where they're going, did they reach out to their families? You know, we go over all of that at the end of the day, every single day.
Pam, there were a couple of questions in the chat. I don't know if you checked on those, about an emergency COVID bag, and then another question about meals being delivered with meal plans. And then I also, when you were talking about some statistics and positive rate, when you were first speaking, your audio was really broken up. And I don't know the statistics you were talking. I know you talked about the wastewater testing, and most people probably couldn't understand that. And then the whatever test results you were sharing, that was hard to understand as well.
Oh gosh. Okay.
I don't remember if you had that right in front of you or not.
So the wastewater testing. So we actually, not me, at least that one's off my plate. I didn't make eye contact at a meeting on that one for wastewater, but wastewater, we actually have a third party that comes out and tests the wastewater within the university, especially focusing on the dorms, to see if we have a high potential for any kind of an outbreak within the university for COVID. So all of our rates have been extremely low through the wastewater testing, but still, to be proactive, we go out into each dorm daily, and we do testing out in the dorms. And the dorm testing are, you don't have to quarantine. That's one of our ways to say to the students, hey, you know, if you test now, you really don't need to come Thursday if you've been selected, and you don't have to quarantine.
And that's the sentinel testing for those parents that might hear about the term.
That's what they're calling the sentinel testing. Yeah, there's kind of these little names for each one.
Yeah.
But yeah, and that's through a Let's Get Checked app. So those students actually get their results before Health Services gets their results. So sometimes it's really difficult. I know this weekend, 4:00 in the morning, somebody was, one of the students was banging on their RA's door. So, oh my gosh, just got my test result. I tested positive. Even though he was asymptomatic, he must have had his phone under his bed and just received notifications, as all students do. Because at 4:00 in the morning, I wouldn't know I was positive. So then, we just told them to do shelter in place. When, we'll figure out where to get you. Campus Safety actually moved him out to Chanute at that point in time, because I think he woke up all of his roommates and everybody.
And there's a good question in the chat about, is the sentinel testing available for off-campus students?
So we're really, really concentrating on those dorms with the sentinel testing. We believe that's our highest risk within this university are those dorms. So we're taking those Let's Get Checked kits, and we really want to utilize them there. For off-campus students, if they're symptomatic or if they've been exposed, call us. We have other methods that we can use to test them. The rapid tests, you have to be symptomatic within the first 5 days to use those, but we also can go through LabCorp, we can go through Quest. We have other options other than using the Let's Get Checked kits elsewhere other than the dorms. The dorms, we're just really, really focusing on them because that is our highest risk right now.
Okay. Anybody else who has a question, if you haven't already put it in, I think everybody knows how to use the chat because the questions have been popping in there. So if you do have another question that we haven't touched on, you're welcome to type it into the chat, or if you'd want to just unmute your microphone and ask it, we'll certainly take it that way as well. We were trying to keep this to an hour and we're about 9 minutes short of that. So I think we're in good shape right now. I'm also going to add my contact information into the chat. If somebody needed to know where to get me, you've got that information right there now. And then I can also put Justin's information in there as well. So you can find Justin.
JP, just to go to that one question, do you suggest we ship an emergency COVID bag to our students? It would be fantastic if every single student had maybe a thermometer. I mean, even though temperature really isn't a symptom anymore, but even something to treat symptoms. It seems that in this population, the symptoms don't even seem to last 24 hours. I mean, they're literally, I think I had a fever last night, I'm not really sure, or even allergies or something like that. So if there's medication that work for them at home, because all it is symptom-based treatment on them. So it's totally up to the parents as to whether or not that's what they want to do. But we certainly have medications here over in health services if they come over here to be tested.
And Pam, I don't know if you can maybe put your contact info into the chat. That would be great. And then there's another question about my daughter lives off campus in our own home, but has a non-athlete roommate. If one of them tests positive, can they go to the Chanute complex? And I don't think I think Chanute's only available for students that live on campus and pay to live on campus, correct?
Yeah, because we were thinking, we thought we tossed this whole thing back and forth around over the summer. So like I said, the first option that we want the students to do is if they have the ability to go home, if they can go home. If they can't and they're off campus, we really talk to them about their living situation. So if it's a positive individual, we ask that they stay obviously in one area of the house, and that they stay in a bedroom in their own bathroom, and that everyone else remove themselves from that positive individual. It's just like living at home, and if your spouse or your kid or somebody like that got the virus, what you would do, you would need to isolate them. So we do educate the students on that are off campus as to how to go about doing that to make sure that they're not contacts.
All right, I'll keep the chat up for another couple minutes. Again, just a quick refresher on the things we're doing for student athletes. Obviously, Pam is trying to deal with 6,000 some odd students and keep them all safe. And appreciate everything that you and your staff are doing and have been doing all summer. Justin White, our director of sports medicine, along with Roy Lemaster, our team physician, and all of our other athletic trainers, have put together a great game plan for us to be able to get back to doing what our student athletes all love doing, whether that's basketball, baseball, rowing, lacrosse, whatever their sport is, to be able to get back to practice. I think it's great for their physical health. Maybe this year it might be more important for their mental health to be back with their friends and their teammates and getting some fun and some exercise in a controlled environment. And that's obviously what our game plan has been. We're phasing it in. We're being very patient and very deliberate and very conservative in our approach. But I think if you look at our overall results, they're going very well. We're going very, very well. Just turn on the news, and I watch collegiate sports and what's going on behind the scenes way closer than probably anybody else on this call. So I know the schools that aren't having success, and I'm really appreciative of the game plan that everybody here at Embry-Riddle has put together, starting all the way back in March when we put this plan together to have face coverings and wellness checks and having to shut down our classes, but then reopening over the summer with our flight department in May, and then some face-to-face classes in June. We learned a lot of lessons when there were only about 900 or 1,000 students here that we've been able to apply this fall when we had a massive influx of students. And I think you all saw that, those of you especially that are new parents that did the drive-through to pick up your key and check-in, had a check-in time, didn't have a normal orientation week. All those things were inconvenient, but I think they were all done for the right reasons. And again, I'll keep knocking on my desk as long as I need to. So far, so good here at Embry-Riddle. I think our game plan has been really, really good. So I don't see any more questions in the chat. And again, wanted to keep it to an hour. So we're before 4 o'clock. All our contact information is there. So I'll say on behalf of Justin and Pam, if you've got a question, we would be happy to try to answer it for you. Reach out to us directly, whether that's by phone or by email. And I know some of your sons and daughters are a long way from home. And we'll try our best to do whatever we can to help take care of them and keep their sports season moving forward, and moving forward safely is the most important thing. So thanks for taking time to join us. Appreciate your time today to come and learn more about our programs. And if there's anything we can do, please reach out and let us know. Thank you.